How does a data center wiring cabling company identify and address market needs? How does a data center wire and cabling company identify and address market needs? There's a couple of different ways to approach this. The easy way, the lazy way of approaching this is trying to copy off of everyone else's homework. Remember the really narcissistic classmate that you had in high school or college and university or something like that, that's always trying to get their friends or classmates to give them the answers to the questions and let them copy their assignments off of them and everything. And we're not going to get on the soapbox here of academic integrity and everything like that, but understand that if you're in the grown-up version of that, and all you're doing is you're looking at everyone else's research and reading their blog posts and reading their research reports and kind of spying on what they're doing, you're only getting one piece of the puzzle. Because unless your product and services roadmap is identical to theirs, unless your company is at the same growth and maturity stage as theirs, unless their ideal client profile and their buyer personas are identical to yours, and their team composition, their expertise is identical to yours, there's a really good chance that you're taking some shortcuts that you really shouldn't be taking. And again, I know this may be painful to hear if your company has a very expensive subscription to one of the dominant research companies in this space, but I would encourage you to use other people's research as no more than 20% of your decision process to feeling like you have a good handle on identifying and addressing market needs. It's okay to have some assumptions in there. It's okay to have other people's research in there, but don't make it more than like 20-25% of how you go about synthesizing all this. Most of identifying and addressing the market needs is going to come from doing a better job of staying closer to your market than anyone else in the market. Getting in early, getting there often, getting unique customer insights that are just nobody else is paying attention to in the space. That's how you get a very clear point of differentiation deep in the buyer's journey at the decision stage. And then we need to focus on who are the ideal companies that need these kinds of wiring, cabling services, products and services. Where are they located? What are their sizes? Are there certain business models or industries that are more conducive than others to the wiring, cabling kind of products and services that you provide? Once you have that, you'll be in a better position to carve out your target account list. You'll be in a better position to identify your buyer personas. But essentially, once we are laser focused on the companies and the individuals within the companies, we need to get closer to them than anyone else in the marketplace to better understand for starters, what the segmentation needs to look like. A lot of companies are way too lazy when it comes to segmentation. They're copying everyone else's segmentation, or they're putting too many people in the same general bucket. And it's not so much that we're going to segment by job title or company size. We need to segment for what these kinds of stakeholders have in common when it comes to their biggest goals and their challenges around what your company does, wiring and cabling. So we need to understand the kinds of wiring cabling initiatives that they're working on, that if they get right, will get them a big promotion, that'll get their team a big bonus, that'll get their company to go to the next level of growth. That's on the goals side. And on the goals side, we can't just copy our competitors' homework. We need to know our buyers, our customers, our prospects' own words on how they describe these goals. And these are going to come from user interviews. They could be in person. They could be over video. They could be surveys. It could be studying how they describe themselves and what you can infer about that by looking at search and social footprints for these kinds of folks. But we really, really need their own words on their biggest goals. And we also need their own words on their biggest stressors, on their biggest challenges, on their biggest frustrations. This is how you're going to get to the root of what their identities look like and what their market needs look like in their own words. And then from there, it's a matter of prioritizing the consensus on what you're hearing at the intersection of your company's current and near future product roadmap. Because it's great to understand what these buyer personas are trying to do for their job. It's great to understand what they're struggling with, but we still need to ground this in the reality of how your company is going to pay the bills, of how your company is going to monetize this insight. And this is going to come from taking that research and putting on your product manager hats and understanding where you are today with your wiring and cabling product line with your portfolio and where you intend to be in the coming months. That's going to be the most telling way for you to identify and address the market needs for your data center wiring and cabling company. And just understand too that this is definitely not a set it and forget it kind of initiative. Marketplaces are dynamic. There's always new kinds of buyers entering, some buyers exiting, as in the case of if you look at a multi-year time horizon, you can see the passing of the torch between, for example, the baby boomer generation down to Gen X and millennials and Gen Z. And then there's also industry issues that are going on. As one of the huge things going on right now in the data center industry is all companies are grappling with a shortage of utility grid power. A lot of legacy data centers are becoming decommissioned or having to be repurposed, as so many companies need a much greater density than they ever had in the past to be able to support AI applications and high performance compute and similar kinds of applications. So there's dynamic natures of the industry. There's constraints within the industry. There's different kinds of buyers, and there's different kinds of competitors that come and go: direct competitors, indirect competitors, non-business model competitors. That's why we're always going to be listening. And one of my favorite ways of listening on a regular basis is if your company is heavily invested in creating educational content and educational events, there's a strong likelihood that you put forms in front of your ideal buyers when they go to download a report or an ebook, or when they go to register for an event or a webinar. And one of the most interesting things that you can do to continually be listening for these insights and market needs is to add a write-in field, add a write-in contact property to these forms that just simply asks, what's your biggest wiring and cabling challenge that you're currently going through? What's your biggest struggle with wiring and cabling? What's the biggest question that you have about wiring and cabling? And not only will their own words be incredibly valuable to your sales team, because that data will go right on their contact record in your CRM, but in aggregate, when you look at all the people that converted on this particular landing page, you'll know the consensus. And when you look across all of your landing pages, across all of your forms, you'll see even greater consensus. And this really doesn't take much time to stay on top of on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, to give you enormous insights on unfulfilled market needs. If you do events and webinars, you can do surveys. You can do surveys that support state of kind of research reports that give you additional insights into identifying and addressing market needs. All of these are grassroots ways that even the smallest of small resource-constrained companies can use to get their mind around how a company that does wiring and cabling products and services in and around the data center industry can identify and address market needs.